Please welcome Val to the stage.
Thanks, Fritz. How does Amazon go from selling cheap socks and books to designer handbags and cloud services? What about Xbox? How did Xbox go from $1 billion write-off and selling products that appeal to white teenage boys from North America who like to shoot and race things, which was frankly what Xbox used to be, to transforming Xbox to be the entertainment hub of the living room, that now the prominent use of Xbox is music and video and film? What about BlackBerry? BlackBerry went from 54% market share to 2% market share. So what happened? What do you think differentiates success and failure in those companies? Shout it out. Innovation. What else? Leadership. Culture. What else? Customer focus. Luck. Say it again? Blockchain. We can debate that later. What I found working alongside some really absolutely amazing leaders, some mediocre leaders, and some downright terrible companies is it isn't your competition. It actually isn't blockchain, sorry to break it to you. But it's how you, as executives, with your executive team and with your boards of directors, lead. It's how you spend your own time and that of your teams. It's how you manage your own energy levels, and it's how you manage the resources around you. So when I used to work at Amazon in my corporate days, I started and I said to the shoe buyer at the time, as I was going around the department getting to know everyone, I said, what's it take to be successful at Amazon? And she said, Val, you've got to be ruthless. You've got to be ruthless, and you've got to make sure that you're prioritizing yourself above everyone else. And that ruthless word stuck to me, but I didn't like it. And after I quit my corporate life and set up my own company, I started going back and looking at all the teams I've ever worked on. I started looking at all of the companies I've ever worked in and tried to deconstruct what was it that made one leader successful and one leader flop. And what I found was the myth of you've got to be a thoughtful leader, you've got to be well-liked and have people follow you, doesn't play out. Neither does the other extreme of you being a Game of Thrones ruthless leader, charging with a sledgehammer, going to people saying, this is what I'm going to do. It's not about being ruthless. It's not about being thoughtful. It's how are you thoughtfully ruthless? How are you intentional about how you manage your own time? How do you know when to say no? How do you think about how you lead? Do you know when to be ruthless? Do you know when to be thoughtful? And so what I'm going to be doing for the next 25 minutes, because I'm going to make sure you get out of here kind of on time, I'm going to be sharing some stories. I'm going to be asking you questions. I want you to ask me questions. I want you to disagree with me. You can ask me anything. I'm around after. I'm around tomorrow. I'm also speaking again tomorrow. And if you want to ask for a friend or a colleague in another company, and you want to give me a scenario, I'm happy to answer that as well. So what I'll be doing is sharing some ideas of how you can lead in a thoughtfully ruthless way. And you can't be thoughtfully ruthless unless you know how you are as a leader and who you are as a leader. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do, for those of you who have finished eating, is pick up a pen, take the menu, and on the back of the menu, write the numbers 1, 3, 5. And this is not a card trick. I want you to write 1, 3, 5. And number 1, I want you to very fast write one sentence that uniquely describes your value. One sentence that describes your value. Then I want you to write 3 distinct traits. Just tell me what's distinct about who you are. Then I want you to write your 5 proudest accomplishments. And that can be in your work life or your whole life. And this isn't a race. It's not a competition. But please wave at me when you've completed. So 1 sentence to describe your unique value, 3 of your distinct traits, 5 of your practiced achievements. Go. And then when you've done that, turn to the person next to you and introduce yourself using 1, 3, 5. And it's okay if you can't think of 5 accomplishments and you're only on 3. That's okay too. How was this? How easy was this? And there's mics going round. Who wants to share how this process was for them? Who wants to go first?
So I would say that sometimes it's difficult because when you spend all day long working with others that are reporting to you and you're leading this and that, to turn and look at yourself and have to do that internally and then put it on paper. And so it's a different mindset. You have to just make a switch.
Right, yeah, because it's not something you spend your time thinking about. Thanks, Sue. Other reactions? How many of you hated doing this and found it really hard? I'd love to hear why. Often, when I get executives doing this, people scowl at me and say, why are you making me do this, Val? This is ridiculous, especially when you're hungry and trying to eat at the same time. I get it. But the reason why this is important is because if you don't know who you are as a leader and you can't articulate it to yourself, then how do you get other people to follow you, for you to lead? And there's another part of the 135. There's actually a 10. And I'm not going to ask you to do that right now. But the 10 are sound bites and catchphrases. And so you may immediately know what your catchphrases are or what your sound bites are. Or you may have to think about it. And your sound bites are like footprints in the sand. They're things that you leave behind when you're not there. It's the things that your team will repeat about you when you're not there. I was working with a leader trying to help him get to, I call this his leadership voice. And I was working with a leader helping him establish his leadership voice, helping him establish his 1, 3, 5, 10. And he said, Val, I don't have sound bites. What are you talking about? I don't have catchphrases, not at all. And then he moved from one division to another. And his team threw a leaving party. And guess what he got for his leaving party? He got a T-shirt. And on the front of the T-shirt was all of his, let's call him Alan, Alanisms on his T-shirt. And so he did have catchphrases, he did have sound bites, and believe me, some of them shouldn't have been printed on a T-shirt. And he wasn't that best pleased with what some of them are. But knowing who you are as a leader is a first step in how you become a thoughtfully ruthless leader. And it's a key part of paying attention to who you are. One of the things I found when in my corporate life I moved from England to the US when I worked for Xbox. And my first performance review, I sat down with my boss expecting to get an amazing performance review because everyone kept telling me everything was awesome and that my work was amazing. And I sat down, and my manager across from me told me I was average. And what I didn't realize at the time was I hadn't calibrated how I worked from Europe to the US. I didn't realize how I needed to dial up how I talked about my achievements and how I shared my successes. And Microsoft at the time was very much, you need to manage that way, and you need to manage that way. And I had no clue, and I didn't pay attention to it, and I should have done, and I got well and truly penalized, shall we say, for that in my performance review. And I find that now with executives, I'll often get calls. I had a text this morning from a technology leader I'm working with going, I can't believe who just got this promotion to this bigger division. I've worked with him in the past, and he's an absolute idiot. He should never have got that promotion. Don't know whether that's ever happened to you. You've looked at your peers and gone, how did they get that job? And it's because of how intentional you are about how you manage your reputation, how you manage your relationships. Tomorrow I'm talking more about influence. I'm talking about how you create this influence bullseye in one of the breakouts in the afternoon. And it's how you intentionally manage your time and how you manage your influence of others and your peers. So I'll talk about that more tomorrow. But you paying attention to how brilliant you are at demonstrating your brilliance will make the difference between how you get promoted, how your team are viewed by their peers that will affect your promotion budget. So that's another aspect of being a thoughtfully ruthless leader. The next thing I want you to think about being thoughtfully ruthless is I want you to mentally just go through your calendar from the last few months. And I want you to think about where have you spent your time and energy. And if I was visualizing it for you, this zone is 0 to 30 days. This is crisis zone. This is immediate problems, immediate customer challenges, immediate calls from the board. This is spending time on the 3 to 6 month horizon. This is 12 months, and over here is 2-3 years out. If by way of pointing, you could just give me an indication, where in the last 3 months have you typically spent most of your time? Can you just all raise your hands and point? Is it mostly over there? Is it mostly over here? Just all do a joint point for me. Okay. And if in an ideal world, where would you like to spend more of your time? More over there or more over here? More over here. Okay. So what happens? What gets in the way? Stuff? What sort of stuff? Emergency of the day. What else? Say it again. Needs of the hour. What else? Low-value meetings. It's funny you should say that because Harvard Business Review just released a report last week to say executives spend 72% of their time in meetings. It's ridiculous. And if you make a note on the yellow paper, I'll happily send you that report. It's crazy. One of the things I find with leaders is they spend way too much time in meetings. And I can tell you a really good trick that will reduce your meeting time by 75%. Want to hear it? Okay, half of all meetings aren't needed. You could cancel them, and it will make no difference whatsoever to your business. You could just cancel them. Reoccurring meetings are the worst thing ever created. I don't know the software engineer at Microsoft that created that reoccurring option, but my goodness, they are such a waste of time. So half of all meetings aren't needed. Then of the meetings that you do have, you only need half of the people there. Meetings are not a spectator sport. Meetings typically are 1 hour. They don't need to be 1 hour. They could be 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 15 minutes. If you were to ruthlessly go through your calendar tomorrow, you could give yourself a lot of time back. And it's a key part of being thoughtfully ruthless. One of the other parts of being thoughtfully ruthless is how you manage your own energy. And if you were to look on Amazon at one of the greatest selling devices, it's the USB battery pack. There are actually over 1 million SKUs of USB chargers. I have 3 in my handbag right now because the thought of my device conking out isn't great. And we spend more time worrying about how our devices are charged than we do about our own energy levels. And if I was to ask you right now, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, and I'm not going to ask you to share, but if I was to ask you how your own energy level is right now, is it at the 100% fully charged at 8:31 on a Tuesday evening? Are you at 50%? Are you at 20%? Or are you at 2% very low battery mode? And what happens with your phone when you get into that 20% low battery mode? What does the phone do? Power saving mode. What does power saving mode do? Turns off non-essential functions. I love it when I talk to a technical crowd because sometimes it takes a while for me to get my audience to answer that question. So I'm so glad. Thank you. What do we do when we're in low battery mode? Get grumpy. What do? Get hangry. Drink lots of coffee, eat chocolate, eat badly, forget about exercising, and run even faster. We don't think to shut off non-essential activities and say, I'm on a really tough sprint right now, and so I'm only going to focus in a ruthless way on the things that are most critical. I pull myself here in the 30-day danger zone, as I call it, as opposed to over here. And if you're able to spend more of your time over there as an executive, you will be more successful. Many leaders don't answer this question. What's the current size and scale of your company right now, of your business? What products, what markets, what customers are you serving? And then leap ahead 3 years. What size and scale is your company in 3 years' time? What customers, what products, what markets? Then here's what you've got to do. You have to time travel your existing organization and team to the future and ask yourself a really important question. Do you have the capacity and capability to run that company the size and scale it will be? And if you don't, you've got to change your hiring plans. I'm not suggesting you go fire everybody right now, but I do suggest you look at who you're hiring, because if everyone is in the biggest job of their lives, you will not be successful, and you will forever be getting the phone calls. You will be ever getting pulled back into 30 days because you're not creating capacity. And what you need to do as leaders is create capacity. Who knows who Banksy is? Banksy, British street artist, an absolute genius. He had an art installation in New York a few years ago called Outside In. And what he did is he would randomly find a wall, he's a graffiti artist in New York, and he'd create a picture. But at the bottom of the picture, he would have a telephone number. And so you'd find a picture, a Banksy picture of art, and then you call the telephone number. And when you're on the phone, you actually hear Banksy, the artist, explaining the piece of art. And it was fascinating, the story behind the little girl holding the balloon and why it was there, because he told a story. And I use Banksy as an example because when we look at how we communicate inside organizations, you are all leading a lot of change. You're introducing new technology. You're trying to get the company to do new ways of doing things. You're introducing digital transformation. But the most common communication I see inside organizations is what? Email. And we were talking about being concise over dinner, and it's really hard to be concise, but many people's emails are too long, too laborious, and you're not using other mechanisms to communicate. And I write a column for Inc. magazine, and I wrote 17 ways to communicate creatively to your team. If you would like that, put a note, like put the number 17 on one of these thingies. Technical term, that is, a thingy. Piece of paper. Put the number 17, and I'll send you that article. I want to do a quick survey now, because I always like statistically significant questionnaires. How do you prefer to read your books these days? I'm going to ask you ebook, audiobook, or real book. Who prefers audiobook? Okay. Who prefers ebook? Who prefers real book? Okay, great. I always like to know that sample size. So my gift to you this evening is I will give you a copy of Thoughtfully Ruthless. All you need to do is fill in that orange form and circle your preference. And then something else is if you have a yellow piece of paper under your chair, you actually will get a real book right now. There we go. Congratulations. Are you fighting this table over a piece? Really? There we go. There you go. You are very welcome. So if you complete your form, I will send you your own copy of your book. Who knows Liverpool Football Club? Got any real football fans in here? Soccer, real football? Okay. Who knows the catchphrase or the slogan of Liverpool Football Club? You'll never walk alone. Thank you. I actually know the CEO of Liverpool Football Club because he used to run Xbox and is a Liverpudlian. He is a Scouser who came over to the US, ran Reebok, ran Sega, ran Xbox, ran Electronic Arts, and then he got his dream job running Liverpool Football Club. He's a really interesting story because one of the things I ask executives when I work with them, and I'm not going to ask you to say this out loud, is, are you in a job that you truly love? Are you working in a role that really makes you happy? Because when I see Peter Moore, CEO of Xbox, and you follow him on Twitter, he's hilarious. He's had his own South Park show. He's really funny on Twitter. But when I see him in his job, he's in his perfect dream job. His eyes sparkle. And I ask you to ask your team, or watch your team, do their eyes sparkle at work? Are they really in their best job? Because I don't believe in any such thing as performance management. There are mismatched employees. Mismatched employees are where the role's outgrown them, the company's moved faster than the job that they had, and they deserve to be in a role that makes their eyes sparkle. So ask yourself, which of your people do you need to put in a job that will make their eyes sparkle? But back to Peter Moore, back to You'll Never Walk Alone. As a leader, it's really lonely. It can be really lonely, which is why I love Evanta bringing events like this where you get to connect with your peers. So the uncomfortable 1-3-5 exercise at the start is designed for you to get to know your peers in a different way than you have before. It doesn't have to be lonely, but you do need to create followership. You do need to find people following you, and you do that by becoming a magnet. So I wish to you that you will never have to walk alone, and I thank you for your attention today. Thank you.